Now recently, the United States of America imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports.
He's done it again. Donald Trump has targeted India yet again. Just 24 hours ago, he had threatened new tariffs on India, and now he's delivered.
Well, Trump's administration has now issued a notice in its steps to hit India.
Most Indian goods imported into the US face a 50% tariff.
Now this is against a 25% increase again, which it did few weeks back. So in total, it is 50% of tariffs on Indian imports as of 9th of August 2025. And by the way, this is highest for any nation in the world. And India has condemned this move of United States of America and has said that this is unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. Now many economic experts warn that this might lead to reduction in India's GDP by 0.5 percentage points, which is again devastating for India. Now while doing this, United States have cited several reasons for this. First one is high trade deficit with India. Second was imbalance between the tariff charged by India and United States of America. And third is India's Russian energy imports. Now because of these reasons, 25% more tariff will be levied by US from India from 27th August onwards. Now before moving ahead, let me show you certain posts written by Donald J. Trump, the President of United States of America. Now you read this. It says that remember, while India is our friend, we have over the years done relatively very little business with them because their tariffs are far too high, amongst the highest in the world, and they have the most strenuous and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers of any country. Also, they have always bought a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia, and Russia's largest buyer of energy along with China. At a time where everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine, all things not good. And which is why it is written that India will therefore be paying a tariff of 25% plus penalty for the above starting on August 1st. This is what Donald J. Trump wrote on 30th of July 2025. And the same day, he posted one more line on the social media platform Truth Social saying we have a massive trade deficit with India, all in capital letters. And the very next day, 31st of July 2025, he wrote on his platform Truth Social that I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together for all I care. We have done very little business with India. Their tariffs are too high, amongst the highest in the world. Likewise, Russia and USA do almost no business together. Let's keep it that way. This is what Donald J. Trump wrote on 31st of July 2025, which also several quarters of the country took notice of inside India and started calling India as a dead economy because of the current dispensation or the current government.
Everybody knows that the Indian economy is a dead economy.
But not just this. 4 days ago, again he posted about India, saying that India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchased, selling it on the open market for big profits. This is what he wrote on his social media platform. Also saying that they don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariffs paid by India to the United States of America. So which means after raising the tariff by 25%, he again stated that he'll be again raising the tariffs against India by more because of India buying Russian oil and selling it at profit in the open market. And after this announcement made on a social media platform, few days later, he again increases the tariff by 25% more, making it to the total tune of 50% tariffs on Indian imports. Now this tariff thing, seen alongside several other instances as well, where Donald J. Trump says that he was the one who mediated between India and Pakistan to stop the war between them.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons.
Other than that, one more instance of US signing a trade deal with Pakistan and also exploring oil reserves in Pakistan, which means US maintaining good relationship with Pakistan all the while Pakistan is perpetrating terror against India in India's territory. All these events which have happened over the last many months have significantly eroded and significantly shrinked the bilateral relationship between United States of America and India. So what will be the impact on India regarding these tariffs? What are tariffs in general? And some basic historical background around the same. And are these tariffs justified or not? We'll be trying to understand in this particular session. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh and you're watching Perspective. Now, first, without beating around the bush, let us try to understand the simple term tariff. Tariff is nothing but a tax which is usually levied on imported goods. Now, for example, I'm India and I import goods from China. Now, let's say from China, I'm importing wheat. Now, from China, wheat comes to my country at 50 rupees per kg. And I from India, Indian authorities impose tariff on Chinese wheat to the tune of 10%, which means the 50 rupees is the cost at which Chinese product comes into my country. 10% would be a tariff levied on that particular product, which means 50 plus 5 rupees tax, that is tariff. Now the product, when comes into my country, would be sold for 55 rupees, or would be coming for 55 rupees and eventually would be sold for a higher price. Now this makes the imported goods expensive in my country, which is why if US is levying a tariff on Indian products, this will make Indian products expensive in US. And you know what will happen? If Indian products are expensive in US, people won't be preferring to buy Indian goods. People would be finding cheaper alternatives. And those cheaper alternatives could be either domestic production in the United States of America, or could be cheaper alternatives from other countries like China, Vietnam, Thailand, Russia, or any other country. Which is why these rising tariffs against India simply means that what US is trying to do is to demotivate Indian producers to send their goods to US, which means they are trying to increase their barriers for trade against Indian products. And when does this happen? This happens when the trade arrangements or trade agreements between both the countries are not well. See, first of all, we need to understand, why do countries trade? The resources across all the world are distributed unfairly. That is, resources are not distributed equally across the world, which is why, due to this inefficient allocation of resources across the world, we have to trade. We don't have any choice but to trade. US also has to trade certain products which are naturally not present inside the US. Same way it goes for India, same way it goes for other countries as well, which means trade is a basic necessity. Now, when we put barriers to these trades, in form of qualitative barriers or quantitative barriers, whatever kind of barriers there might be, we basically restrict trade. And this was the case before 1991, or so to say before 1995. Before 1991, it was the case with India, where intentionally India was a relatively closed economy. Barriers to trade were very, very high. But after 1991, LPG reforms, Indian economy opened. And similarly, in the world, after formation of World Trade Organization in 1995, the world economy also opened a bit. Which is why the term globalization, if you see, the globalization term in itself is meant to go away or do away with these barriers to trade and to ensure free and fair trade across the world. So this is the historical perspective, which means free and fair trade across the world has been prominent since late 1990s. But recently, in the last one decade, what we have seen is that from globalization, the tendencies of the world has been shifting towards deglobalization or towards protectionism. For example, when Donald J. Trump first came to power, when he first became the president, he again went for these tariffs. And at that time, one war was very popular, US-China tariff war or trade war, where again US imposed multiple tariffs on China, China again retaliated back. But this time, till now, India has not retaliated back. Because recently, when we saw few months back, when Donald J. Trump put 100% tariffs in China, China also put 100% tariff in US. And also China banned the export of rare earth elements to the United States of America as well. India is yet to take a certain move or a certain stance. Yes, our Ministry of External Affairs has given a very bold statement. Our Prime Minister of India has also stated that we won't bow down to any other external force or any other external power, which is the case of our farmers, our local peoples, our local peasants. But still, India needs to show this with an action. And yes, we have a very carefully orchestrated and diplomatic approach towards things in general like these extreme events, but still India needs to take a measure against this. Now, since we have understood tariff and since we have understood the global trade in general, now recently you would know the news as well that US has imported a tariff of 50% on Indian goods. Which means any Indian good now which would be entering into US would be subjected to a 50% tax by the US government. And that tax or that tariff would go directly to the pockets of US government. Now let's understand why US is doing so. Then we'll understand the impact. See, understanding the reason, first reason which US gives is that the trade balance between India and US is very negative from the sides of US. Now, for India's perspective, it is a trade surplus, but from US perspective, it is a trade deficit, which is why US says that we need to reduce this deficit by increasing US exports to India and reducing India's imports into US. If they do so, the trade balance from US perspective would go to positive. Also, second point is also true, where US says that India has also been levying a lot of tariff against US products. And that is also true because many of the sports cars or many of the bikes or many other items which you have to import from US, India definitely imports a hefty amount of tariff. And the reason given by Indian government is for the protection of our domestic producers. So that if US product comes into India at a cheaper cost, who would buy Indian products? So to protect our domestic producers, we levy heavy percentage of tariff on US products. And that is what Donald J. Trump says, that he wants to have a reciprocative tariff policy, which means if you put tariff on us, we will put tariff on you. Till that extent, it is understandable. Till that extent, it is understood and it is justifiable as well. It is rational. Any rational being would say that, okay, if you are imposing tariff on my products, I would impose tariff on your products as well. But the third reason is where the experts and the public becomes a bit skeptical. The reason is India importing oil from Russia, or India importing energy sources from Russia. Now that is a very obnoxious and unjustified reason to say the least. What Donald Trump forgot was that it was not just India who has been importing goods or services or oil from Russia. US itself from January of 2022 has imported around $24.5 billion worth of goods from Russia. Now, who would answer for that? And not just this, even European Union have imported multiple of billions of dollars of energy, of LNG, of natural gas, of different other minerals, fertilizers from Russia since 2022. Who would answer for that? And in fact, even in the year 2024 alone, US imported fertilizers to the tune of $1.27 billion from Russia alone. Also, plutonium and palladium worth more than $1 billion was imported by US from Russia. Now, this makes us question, while US can import enriched uranium and plutonium from Russia, European Union can import natural gas from Russia, and both the regions, that is US and European Union, can import billions and billions of dollars of goods from Russia after the Russia-Ukraine war. Why can't India do so? Or are you trying to say that you can do whatever you want and India has to do whatever you say? Or India has to obey to your terms? This is simply Western hypocrisy, which India multiple times have highlighted in multiple forums, especially against European Union, which keeps on saying that India is funding the war. If this is India funding the war, then is US and European Union also not funding the Russia-Ukraine war? Which is why this third reason given by the US for levying this much tariff against India is simply unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable to say the least. And the question is, what will be the impact? See, the impact would be very, very minimal. Many experts say that it would reduce our GDP to the extent of 0.5%. But still, if we see other components of our GDP, example, our consumption or investment or government expenditure might solve the problem and might increase the overall GDP net positively in order to ensure that this negative impact would be subsided, which is why the negative impact won't be much. And also, if we see the tariffs imposed between the governments, they do not affect the government directly. Whom they affect is actually the people. The real effect is hit on the companies and the workers by disrupting the supply chains. So, which is why Indian exporters would be the ones who will be facing the brunt, especially the labor who are in the labor-intensive sectors like textiles, carpets, food products, or other sectors as well. They might lose their contracts, or also they might lose a lot of their businesses, and it might lead to job losses and livelihood disruptions for the private sector. See, if we see the overall basket of India's exports, only 20% of the overall exports of India are US bound, which means only about 2% of the GDP. Now, this 20% won't simply come to zero. They might reduce because of the tariff, but all the exports of India to US won't be zero. It would take a hit, but it won't be zero, which is why certain vulnerable sectors, they would face the brunt. Overall, if we see from a macroeconomic perspective and stability perspective, India's economy would more or less remain stable. Now, while the US president has highlighted Indian economy to be a dead economy, we must not fail to address this by highlighting the fact that Indian economy is right now a $4 trillion economy, aiming towards going towards $10 trillion economy. Also, it is the fourth largest economy in the world, only after US, China, and Germany. Now, alongside this, of course, we are quite back in terms of per capita income, but still in case of a lot of other macroeconomic indicators, we are at the top 5. Which means from fragile 5 to the fourth largest economy in the world, India has taken a very long road ahead. And India has taken steep jumps over the years in order to reach at a place where it is. Is there a scope of improvement? Yes, definitely there is a scope of improvement. Are there loopholes in Indian economy? Yes, there are a lot of loopholes in Indian economy. But is buying oil from Russia bad for India? The answer is no. See, India has very clearly stated that it is not for any geopolitics, it is not due to any political reason, it is simply economic reasons because of which we are buying oil from Russia. And see, if we compare US and Russia, over the last many decades as well, Russia has been a consistent, stable partner for India. As compared to US, every few years or every few decades, US has a tendency of changing its stance. Now again recently, because we have seen that US is again becoming or increasing its closeness towards Pakistan, where Pakistan's Army General Asim Munir also visited Washington and met US President over a lunch. Now other than this, US siding with Pakistan in a lot of other critical junctures of our history is also something we have not forgotten as a population. Which is why we take all these things at our stride. We will definitely work diplomatically to ensure what can be done in future in this particular regard. And the aim would be definitely to minimize losses through trade and negotiations. And if a fair trade deal is to be reached between the two countries, so be it. And while doing this, we need to ensure that domestically we usher in good set of reforms, because a country internationally is only as strong as it is strong domestically. So for a country to be internationally very strong, internationally very, very loud, a country needs to be domestically very, very sound. So we need to ensure that we become domestically sound in order to be internationally heard. I hope you gained a new perspective from the session. All the very best and have a beautiful day. Thank you.